At this time, it is my pleasure to bring your July 2023 Hanover Borough Council meeting to order. I'm going to request that we first all stand and repeat our wonderful national anthem. No, excuse me. Just a surprise, we're not singing. Then we'll follow out with a brief moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and please be seated. Secretary Felix, please commence with the calling of our roll.
Okay, Mr. Fuentes?
Here.
Mrs. Spunk? Here. Mrs. Greenholt?
Here.
Mr. Greenholt?
Here.
Mr. Hegberg?
Here.
Mr. Kress?
Here.
Mr. Lookenbill?
Here.
Mr. Ricart?
Here.
Mr. Rowland?
Here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Dr.
Okay,
Rupp?
great.
Here.
Zachary Rice, filling in for Solicitor Schultes?
Here.
Manager Lewis?
Here.
Mayor Whitman? Secretary Felix? Junior Counsel Taya Prasad? Libby Houston? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. This time we'll move into our presentation. Tonight it is from the York County Planning Commission Transportation Improvement Program. Chris, the floor is yours. Yep, come up front if you'd like to speak to the microphone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me through the mic? We're good?
You can put it up a little bit if you want. You can adjust that.
I think we're
That's
good.
better.
I can get a booming voice here. Good evening. My name is Chris Caba. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the York County Planning Commission. Tonight I'm here to talk to you about the 2025 Transportation Improvement Program. Tonight I'm going to go over a very high-end overview of the Transportation Improvement Program, also known as the TIP. I'm going to discuss who we are, what we do, what is the TIP exactly, some of the expectations that the municipality can understand in regards to the funding of the TIP, and us looking for opportunities for input. So at the YCPC, our mission is to guide sustainable development and preservation and to improve the quality of life in York County. Sorry, I'm just gonna, if you just wanna, do you want me to say, move slide, next slide? Do you want me to do that? Just go. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna go skip ahead a couple slides. Yeah, you can keep going. Next slide. All right, so our team, I'm part of the Transportation Planning Division. We're one of 9 different groups within the York County Planning Commission. We primarily work with the land use planning groups within the county, so specifically long-range planning and municipal planning. Next slide. And as a member of the YCPC, we also are a part of the York Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is the funding body for transportation projects in York County. So it's made up of the technical committee and the coordinating committee. And essentially what the technical committee does is they give recommendations and they solicit advice on various projects, transportation related throughout the county, and give their recommendations to the coordinating committee. The coordinating committee is the fiscal body of the MPO that essentially decides on whether a project can be funded or not funded. They also approve our planning projects as well as our plans. We also have 4 other bodies that submit advice and recommendations to the coordinating committee. Those include the transit committee, that is Rabbit Transit, the bicycle and pedestrian committee, the freight advisory committee, which is currently being established as part of our freight planning document that was approved this year, as well as the TASA Review Committee. TASA is the Transportation's Alternative Set-Aside Fund. So those are projects that are only non-motorized transportation, trails, historic preservation, things like that. Next slide, please.
Some of those names need to be updated on that slide for us, especially Sam Miller's no longer with us.
Correct. We will be updating, we're actually in the process of updating all of our, both bodies, the technical committee and coordinating committee at the upcoming August meetings.
Okay, because he's been gone pushing a year, so, anyway, okay, thank you.
Thanks. So we have at the Planning Commission, we have several core transportation planning documents. We start at a 25-year plan. We adopted the Go York 2045 plan in 2021. Those are our policies, programs, and our largest projects that have high cost level estimates. We work down from there. We do a capital improvements plan, which is how do we program all of our road assets and our bridge assets for the next several years to come. We dwindle that down to the 12-year plan, and then we come to the Transportation Improvement Program, which is a 4-year plan for all of the transportation projects in a financially constrained way. So all the money is allocated to each project for each phase of the project. So each project that is placed on the tip has to have a preliminary engineering, final design, right-of-way utility, and a construction allocation to it before we can officially put it on the tip. Next slide. Some of our other planning documents, I'm briefly going to go through this. We just adopted this past year the bicycle and pedestrian plan, as well as the freight plan is the first freight plan of York County, and we are currently working on a lot of safety project evaluations and our coordinated plan, which is working with Rapid Transit and other agencies that move people around town via public transit or some type of other transit. Next slide. So what is the TIP? Next slide. Our 2023 Transportation Improvement Program had 116 projects programmed on it for the 4 years of 2023 through 2026, amounting to $192 million investment in York County. Next slide. So the project types that you'll find on the tip, we have asset management, so we have the road maintenance and we have bridge maintenance. We have safety improvements, congestion reduction, non-motorized work, biking and walking, as well as public transit services. Next slide. And we get our funding from state and federal pots of money. So we have some flexible money, we have some not flexible money. The flexible funds, the Federal Surface Transportation Program, we can use those federal funds for any type of project that we want. Any type of project that is high up on our list that we can't fund, we can put towards, a congestion project or a safety project or signalization type of project. But then we also have not flexible funds in the form of Highway Safety Improvement Program funds. So those are specific monies that are allocated only towards safety projects. And we also have the transportation set aside, which is non-motorized transportation. Those are federal funds that we can only use on non-motorized transportation projects. So we have a little wiggle room with some of our funding sources. We have some that has to be specific and targeted towards specific projects in York County. Next slide. So for the 2025 TIP, we are looking at an approximate estimate of $202.6 million for the years 2025 through 2029. $120 million in road maintenance and our flexible funds, about $45 million in bridge maintenance, $12 million towards safety, $23 million in congestion and air quality, as well as $2 million towards biking and walking. Next slide. And you can just skip over that one. Just go to the next one. This is the expectation. So we might have $202 million over a 4-year period, but the reality is we have only about $48 million of that $202 million to program new projects. So all of that other money is already dedicated funding, and those projects carry over from one tip to the next. So a bridge project typically takes about 6 years to get completed, from PE, preliminary engineering, the whole way to construction. So those projects go from tip to tip until we complete the actual construction of the project. So in essence, what does this mean? Out of 120 million of road maintenance flexible funds, we only have about 35 for new projects. Bridge maintenance, we only have about 3 million. Safety, 4.6. Congestion, 3 million. Biking and walking, 1.3. So we are bound a little bit by the amount of projects that we already have programmed. Next slide. And the drawbacks of using the TIP as a funding source for transportation projects is since we use state and federal funding, longer timeline, a lot more red tape, a lot more regulations associated with both state and federal monies that we have to follow in order to complete a project, and that means the cost of the project goes up. Longer timeline, longer cost. Next slide. And for the 2025 TIP, right now, we are currently going out to every single municipality in York County, all 72 municipalities this summer, and giving this same speech, giving this same presentation to every single board and borough council throughout the county, to not only educate but inform and get your feedback on the transportation issues in your municipality. Next month, towards the end of August, September, we will begin to work with PennDOT as part of the PennDOT Connects process. So any new project that we get, if it is in your municipality, we will begin to plan with the municipality to discuss issues related to that new candidate project. So I've talked with AJ Grimm a lot in the past regarding new projects. So we get him and the manager and whoever else is part of the borough that wants to be a part of the conversation to talk about issues related to that project that PennDOT may not be aware of. We are also on the call to discuss other issues, and we allow the municipality to give us and PennDOT feedback on that project. We'll go through a lot of documentation for the TIP, and next spring we'll go into the formal public comment period and then hopefully approve the 2025 TIP and all of our projects for the next 4 years in the end of June. Next slide. So
All these meetings are advertised, right? So everybody knows when they are.
the PennDOT Connects meetings are not advertised. They are specific to the borough municipality representatives. We will put out an invitation to Borough Council, Public Works, manager, everyone associated that would like to attend, and then we will hold them. The public comment period will come in on the back end of that in terms of our MPO meetings as well as our open public comment period early next spring.
Thank you.
Yep. So your role, the municipality, you obviously know your area better than I can. I live in York Township. We have members of the transportation planning staff that live, all over. So we look to you to give us feedback on projects and issues within your municipality that we can work on. We have an alternative analysis study going on right now for the intersection of Eisenhower and Broadway, which is at the top of our priority in terms of congestion management and safety. So we have data, we have information, but we look to you to determine what are the real issues on the ground. And we've been in contact with Hanover Borough. They've been great, and we have communicated a lot with members of your staff to discuss issues in the municipality. Next slide. And this is my contact information on the back of the packet, phone number, email. My name is Chris Caba, Senior Transportation Planner. You can put in any requests into me or anyone on the staff to discuss issues within the municipality. We're looking for any feedback that you would like to give over the next couple months. But with that is my presentation. I would like to open it up. If you have any general questions or comments, I can take that back and we can put it in our pile of municipal questions and comments that we've gotten over the past several months. Are there any comments or questions?
Well, I have one.
Yes.
Do you work with private investors at all?
We do to an extent. So it's very, those kinds of public-private partnerships are very complicated to do. We have worked a project in Dover Township and Manchester Township along one of their roads, along Canal Road. We've worked with private investors, specifically the developers that are developing warehousing on that road, to fund transportation improvements on that road. But it is very tedious. It gets into a lot of legal issues related to who's going to pay what and how it's going to be funded. So those take a long time to be done. We're currently looking at discussing funding issues related to Interstate Exit 26 possibility on 83, but once again, that's around the same area, and so we're going to be looking at some of the developers in the area, but a lot of this is all 100% state and federal funding that we get from the government.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to remember what you said, but it was something about the length of time that it took to complete a road or a bridge or something.
A bridge.
What did you say that was?
So a lot of bridge replacement projects take
Yeah.
typically 6 years to complete, from engineering the whole way to.
My hearing's off. 60 or 6?
Six.
6, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I really hope not
mean,
60.
I was thinking, 60? I don't
It
think
feels
so.
like 60
Roads
sometimes.
will take 60.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank
we have a bridge that
job.
needs to be replaced. You can look at 194 in Washington Township, Bermudian Creek bridge that we have, that will carry over from the 23 tip to the 25 tip, because we have certain money allocated to a certain phase, and those have to carry over from every 2-3 years.
Thank you.
Does this funding include the infrastructure bill funding, or is that not
Yes.
coming through yet?
That 202 million is actually an increase due to the bipartisan infrastructure law that was just passed a few years ago. It's not an incredible amount more, but it is still more that we can allocate towards our assets in the county.
Question for Manager Lewis. Do we have a list of projects that we've identified yet, or is that in process?
It's in process. We are working on that. Some of that has already been communicated. AJ's already talked with Chris about some of it. But we're in the process of developing that.
Okay, would we get a chance to take a look at that?
How
Because
long
I
does
have
it-
a few items I'd like to make sure are on there.
Okay, how long does it take to have all that placed before you to make decisions?
Well, we
Or is
have.
it ongoing?
It's ongoing right now. I suggest if you have recommendations, the sooner that you can get that into our planning commission, me or one of my other staff, the better. That way we can communicate all that as we are in the development of this transportation improvement program, that we have everything now instead of waiting until like the public comment period, which is several months down the road, and that pushes everything back. So the sooner we have like a list of issues to look at, the sooner we can dive into our project selection criteria and how we're going to pick projects, looking at the data to see if a road is, not functioning correctly. Those kinds of things go into a lot of the project selection. And so the sooner we have those, sooner we can communicate that with PennDOT and then have follow-up meetings with municipal representatives.
Would that involve, Margie, would that involve like issues that we're having down in
Railroads.
Brian's ward with the railroad crossing there?
Right.
Would this be involved in that or no?
Probably not.
That's
It
railroad.
would.
That's
We're
gonna be
waiting on
railroad.
This would be
railroad.
our personal contribution. Gotcha. Thank you.
If you do have an issue with a railroad crossing, by all means, communicate that to us and we will see what we can
About
do.
all
We
of
do
them?
have contacts with the railroad, especially working on our freight plan. We have developed some contacts and we can try to.
I'd be shocked if AJ hasn't
Oh,
already
yeah,
shared
I-
that with someone.
Yeah,
I'm sure that he has.
So
They've blown
Any,
apart.
any type of,
Put it on the list, let's
Yeah.
just put it that way.
What's this
We'll
now?
put it on the list.
Okay, the only reason that I brought that
It's an
up
ongoing
is there are
battle.
so many complaints coming in, right,
Right.
Brian?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting them from my ward, from all the work areas down there, and people are just absolutely obsessed with getting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing
AJ
is
has a
that
good
the
answer
tracks,
for that.
the tracks are pulled up. They're not using it anymore, so they pulled up some of the tracks, the rails, and it's just sitting there, and when people go over it, it's like being in a covered wagon back in
That's actually true.
1899, okay?
So you're suggesting
So
we can
that's the
relay
only
some of this
reason I
through
asked
you?
that.
Yeah,
And see
yeah.
if you can get a
Please
quicker
do.
response?
yeah,
Right.
you know, when we get those kind of issues, we try to deal with it as quickly as we can. There's only so much we can do, but we do have contacts with the railroad and with PennDOT, and especially if it's on a state road, I would assume it intersects a state road maybe, or
What'd you
Yeah.
say, Chuck?
Yeah, a couple of them do.
we can push the issue a little bit, especially we have a transportation coalition group of the elected representatives in York County that we can discuss that with them and try to move something along. So, yep, please do.
Thank
In your
you for your
in your
input.
criteria for selection of projects, do you look at equity across the county, or or is that a part of your selection process or not?
So we do have an environmental justice component as part of the transportation improvement program that focuses on low income and minority populations and the benefits and burdens of our projects on certain populations within the county. So we find where our EJ communities are, and we look to see what projects we can program to benefit everyone within an area, as well as having the greatest benefit to the county as a whole. So we do have a section of the TIP and our long-range transportation plan focused on EJ populations as well. And especially with our bike and pedestrian plan, that's been a big focus of connecting employment and amenities to people that also don't have the means to drive. So it's a big factor in what we do.
So if we have a project we submit to you, would we be notified, like, when that decision is going to be made? That we could come in, not we, but I mean, maybe Margie or somebody could come and sort of make a testimony or listen or see
Yes.
how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you submit a list, we'll discuss the project internally and with PennDOT. And our MPO meetings are always available. Our technical committee and coordinating committee, they meet about every other month or so, or like quarterly, but they'll meet in the same month. So you would come and present a project to the technical committee, and they would recommend whether moving it to the coordinating committee to discuss funding issues. But since we're in the TIP development process, we can kind of streamline that and get the project all to them all.
You must get lots of projects.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
All
Carter.
right. Thank you so much for your time.
This time, we're going to transition into public comment. I have three forms that were filled out. We're going to start with Audrey Coppersmith. There you are.
So you can't, I don't want to do a consent agenda or something.
Hello there, it's Audrey Coppersmith, 412 Osage Drive. Just a quick update on CT4 for those of you that are getting caught up in the process. First of all, I want to say thank you to the borough personnel that have been supporting us and coming up to our community, including a number of people who were up in our community yesterday, and they were reviewing a number of the things that are going on, including the areas that are the retention ponds and so forth that are in question with regards to the second sinkhole. So just want to show you a couple of pictures, just so you have an idea. And then my one question is how the developer can start building on the last duplex to be built while the sinkhole has not been addressed. So my concern would be is we're working on other things in the development, but we're not addressing the sinkhole. And that sinkhole started at the beginning of June. And here we are almost at the end of July, and all the residents are being told is that it's under review or it's being investigated. So my concern is, obviously for that. So this was, let's see, this was one area that they were starting quite early this morning with the cranes, which is fine. 7 o'clock this morning, waking everybody up with the cranes is perfectly fine and noticeable. We can see them, plain as day, there. There are some areas, there is one area of concern that we're watching carefully in the sediment pond that is, or the retention pond that is right below where my house is. And it's one that we've been watching on the left-hand side that seems to be getting wider and wider. That is not one that's officially identified right now, but since we already had 2 on one street over, we want to keep an eye out for what else is developing in the community before it becomes a problem. Especially since now that they're working on this duplex, they will shut off the main access for the big equipment, because there's trees on one side, there's a porch on the other side, a small retention pond, and then there's gonna be a house or a duplex. So getting large equipment in there, if there's a problem, is going to be an issue. And since that comes over to the homeowners, later on down the road, we wanna make sure that if it's a developing problem, we address it before it becomes a problem. Let's see, this is an updated as of this afternoon. This is still what the people are looking out onto. That are near sinkhole number 2, that has not been taken care of yet. And they've been looking out on this since the beginning of June. The first sinkhole started in May. They filled that one with about, I believe it was 17 trucks worth of the slurry and so forth. They started on the second one, but it started spitting it out. So therefore they had to stop, and it's been under review since then. So like I said, we're coming up on almost the beginning of August and no real answers, and everybody's trying to figure out exactly what's, this is clearly not what they bought into in a 55-plus community, to look at this and so forth. And then lastly, within CT4 is a number of the roads seem to be, or the sidewalks seem to be getting marked yesterday with the R and the remove and some of the macadam. It seems like they went around the outside of the development, but they kind of skipped the middle roads, so we're wondering, are they coming back to do the roads on the inside? They did the large cypress, but anything on Hawthorne, Osage, and Basswood was not touched. There's no R markings, there's no X's and so forth. And just walking down my street with, I guess, 4 houses on my side, there's 5, but just the 4 houses, these are the kind of things we're seeing last night, even as I was out watering. So clearly, these are some issues that, sorry, I can pass these around, but just so you have an idea of all the curbing work that's going to need to be done before roads are paved. And so I'm hoping that, I know from engineering, whatever they said, that they do come and mark things. And since they were marking out on Cypress, we thought, well, we want to make sure that they don't forget us up on the little smaller streets in between. So, like I said, I have about 8 or 9 of them, and that was just walking down 3.5 houses. Literally almost every single curb is cracked and has major cracks in it. So we just want to make sure that those things get addressed too, so that they don't become the homeowner's expense. So again, thank you for those that have come and supported us and tried to help us. We're still requesting any and all help from, we'll take it from any source, trust me, at this point. But we want to make sure that it's the safest community that it can be at this point. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Tammy Gilbert.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about Cherry Tree 5, which is right next to Cherry Tree 4. I guess my first one is a question. I know Joe Myers, Building and Development, asked for a second extension to get the plans into planning. Can he just keep extending that? I guess it's more of a legal question before he has to submit plans?
It is a legal question.
Yeah, I believe our solicitor at a previous meeting said he granted us, in essence, an extension.
Right.
It's our extension, not his, is the one I'm
That's
familiar
correct,
with.
and I'm not familiar with this particular development, but the
Please.
timeline or the process we're talking about is under the municipality's planning code, which is the state enabling legislation that governs how a municipality reviews and approves a land development plan. The municipality has 90 days to act from, and that clock starts running from the first planning commission. Typically, it's very typical for a developer to have some things to work through on the plan and to request extensions. But you're right, it is essentially, that 90-day deadline is your deadline. So really, it's the developer coming to the borough saying, hey, I'll grant you an extension because I realize if you didn't have an extension and you had to act within that 90 days, my plan is not ready to be approved, so.
Okay. Do we have final plans for that?
I'm not aware.
No,
So why would you?
we've seen nothing.
Okay. Like, thinking time-wise, the proposal came in right before the deadline. So, now we're talking a year, and whether it's your extension or whatever, are we gonna be looking 5 years from now, that same thing, to try to, or you think something's gonna happen before that?
It's a good question, and if we're just generally categorically, we're here to hear you. We're
Right.
not- This
Okay.
isn't a question and
Question and
answer.
answer. Okay.
But I'm not dodging your question.
Right.
We have an alternate solicitor this evening.
Sure.
Who is not as intimately familiar as Solicitor Schultes is. So I would suggest you continue that question through the borough manager, through
Okay.
our solicitor, and I'll make sure they answer that.
Okay.
They've heard you.
And Attorney Rice, you're lucky you're here tonight. I'm saying that sarcastically.
Well, if it's, I look to the council, if it's something that you would like,
Procedurally,
if somebody
yeah.
can give me some bit of background, I can try to sift through it, or if you think it's better to perhaps.
I think it's better.
That's
let-
okay.
Tim is
Yeah.
probably
Oh, yeah.
intimately involved.
I don't
and
want
perhaps-
to say
No,
something
no,
that you would
I understand.
misinterpret. Yeah.
Well, I'm here to give,
That's a sinkhole you dropped in.
Not jokingly here on sinkholes. Is there a sinkhole problem over near, on like Ash Drive or over?
Yeah.
There's a sinkhole there too, right?
yeah, it's behind Terry Cromer's house, which I
Okay.
just found out has been sold. So the property that adjoins this Cherry Tree 5, one neighbor's house is up for sale that's directly going to be affected by it. Terry Cromer's house, I understand, is sold, and the sinkhole is behind his house. I think there's a big concrete pad back there that he regularly fills in. I walked down there over the weekend. It looked fairly stable when I was down there. So I guess he just fills it in when it drops out. But I did say something to Chris Miller about it and sent him some pictures, so he was going to, and I know I talked to Margie about it as well.
Yeah, I know, Bill, that the only thing that we have to be concerned with when somebody buys land and puts it into housing is the perking. But my whole issue as I'm looking over this as a mere female is why we don't have other avenues for inspection of land that we end up in this type of a situation.
Right.
I just have questions about it,
To be
Bill.
clear, there's two issues. There's a sinkhole issue, and there's the Cherry Tree 5 development,
Sure.
if you will.
Yeah.
What the residents would prefer is one type of housing, what's being
Right.
proposed is another. So
Right, but the thing is, then I was made aware that there is a sinkhole
Right.
where Cherry Tree 5 wants to go, and I'm going, I think all of council needs to be aware of it and
Right.
not surprised by it at a later date.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Speaking of sinkholes, when I walked the rail trail a month ago, they were doing some work on that Med Ed part, which isn't part of your municipality. I think it's Penn Township, but there was a sinkhole there as well. It was probably about this big, and I took some photos of it because it went pretty deep. So I don't know if that whole area is prone to it or not, just to let you know.
It is, and I mean, just limited knowledge of, and not testifying as an expert here, but sinkholes have been happening for billions of years. It had a propensity to happen before you bought your house, before I bought my house, before any of us, and it will continue to exist until after we no longer have our houses. So,
Okay.
Limestone under the land.
karst topography, yep.
Right.
And here, my last point is, here's where I think you can make a difference as council. We were in a hearing 2 months ago with Joe Myers, when we were contesting the zoning board decision. And our case was basically thrown out from the judge because we didn't have standing. And since then, since this whole thing came about, I've asked 100 people, some of them very professional people with lots of education, do you know what party status is? Not one person knew what party status is. So you as an attorney and your partner, and certainly Senef, who is on the zoning, you need to tell people that. I mean, here we don't have a legal standing.
But you also need to inform yourself of your legal rights.
I do.
We're not a free legal service, sorry.
I know,
mean,
and
you-
I agree.
Sometimes the answer costs money rather than free, and in fact, I personally, totally speaking personally here to you, value the one I pay for more than the free one when it comes to legal advice.
But, you know, I came to the borough that first hearing they were having, when I was going out of town that same day, couldn't make that first one. I approached Eric and Chris, and I said, what can we do as a group of taxpayers?
They can't give you legal advice either. I'm sorry.
No one mentioned party status, not one person. And as,
It's not their responsibility.
I think as an attorney for the
They're
borough.
not attorneys.
No, this attorney.
Okay.
Or the attorney certainly Senef, when our neighborhood came and there was 20 of us there at that meeting, and we were in opposition, he did us a huge disservice not to say, you should have party status. Now granted, he swore us in, but that party did not come up. And the attorney that we used, he sits on municipality boards, and the judge even agreed, you need to tell people that have an opposition, as they may not come to every board or municipality, whatever, borough meeting like we do, council meeting, and you have to tell them, because we don't know that, you know. Who knows if I ever attend another council meeting after this, but I feel I'm fairly informed, but how would I know that? And how would other taxpayers know that? So what I'm asking is, legally, I think your attorneys, you should have a talk with them and say, look, next time there's an opposition, we owe it to our taxpayers to say, you need parties, or let me explain to you what party status is. That's kind of my point, and I'll get off my
We heard your
soapbox.
points. All right.
But yes, that's the only thing I have yet tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Lastly, on the list here, we have Josh Posey. Did I say it right?
Yes,
And, yep, come forward. We have you at 109 3rd Street.
yes, sir.
Okay. What do you like to say?
I was under the impression if I wanted to get an alleyway named, I would have to either present a letter to everyone here or come speak in person. So I'm not even sure what course I need to take, but I would like to get the alleyway beside our building changed to Warrior Way. Now, we're 109 3rd Street, but we're 109 3rd Street R, so we're the rear building on the property. We're the only mailbox in that alleyway. No other houses facing that way, so I was really hoping I could get that named and have our address changed.
I think that your next step would be to put it in writing. You know, it might be helpful to do up some type of a pictorial representation, a sketch or something that we could see your position on that alley, and let us go from there. So, I
Okay.
mean, we've got the verbal, we know what you want, now it's a
Okay.
matter of seeing it. And
Who would I turn that
Manager
into?
Lewis, right here, is in charge of this.
Would I bring that to the building?
Sure.
Directly
You
to
can mail
you?
it, bring it
Okay.
to me, email me, whatever.
Okay, awesome, yeah, that was my,
Yeah, do that next, and then we'll go from there.
perfect, thanks,
All right,
sir.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else in the room? Seeing none, I'll ask community media to help me open up for electronic attendees. Mr. Rowland, we're not going to let you speak under public comment, sorry. All righty, we will close public comment and move into the chair makes a request for approval of the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Rupp. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of said approval, consent agenda approval, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. With that, we'll move into standing committee reports, the first being Finance and Personnel. Counselor Rowland, you still there?
Yeah, President Rickard, I'm going to ask you to handle the two agenda items for me as you're there on site, if you don't mind.
Will do. The first
Thanks
is,
very much.
the first would be the motion of, consideration of a motion to advertise an ordinance to amend and clarify parking regulations within Chapter 254, the Hanover Borough Code.
So motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of the consideration signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Secondly, we request consideration of a motion to approve Resolution Number 1377 to ratify authorization of payment of costs for an emergency repair of the generator at the Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant and for costs for rental of an emergency generator repair until the original generator can be repaired and returned to service.
So motion.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Rowland. Mr. Ricart,
Thank you very much.
mention it. We will segue now into Water and Sewer Committee, and the Honorable Counselor Greenholt is going to do the asking this evening.
Consideration of a motion to grant the request for waivers of Section 310-15A and Section 310-19D6 of the Hanover Borough Stormwater Regulations under Section 310 of the Hanover Borough Code in relation to the Chick-fil-A 340 Eisenhower Drive Stormwater Management Plan dated March 17, 2023, revised June 23, 2023, subject to the following conditions. A, provision of narrative on where increased volume of stormwater travels and what is the related impact thereof. B, addition of an impermeable liner to the bottom of each subsurface facility. C, provision of an increased maintenance schedule beyond that of the original manufacturer.
So motion. I second.
All in favor of that one signify with an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And consideration of a motion to approve the Chick-fil-A 340 Eisenhower Drive Stormwater Management Plan dated March 17th, 2023, revised June 23rd, 2023, subject to conditions set forth in RIT 2's review letter dated July 10th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, a nay? That motion carries. Thank you, Counselor Greenholt. We will mention that there will be no mayor's report this evening because there is no mayor this evening. And that will move us into the last and final public comment portion for the meeting. Anyone in the room, any follow-up, rebuttal? Seeing none, I'll ask community, still Counselor Rowland. We will close public comment. The council photo that's printed on your agenda will happen after the meeting rather than during. And the chair asks for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Excellent, from Cyberland. All in favor of adjournment, signify with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
See you next month. Thank you all.
Thank you all.